Welcome to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show with me, Jess Tomlinson. Interviews to inspire a new movement of leaders and entrepreneurs. The ones who lead with vulnerability and authenticity, stand in visibility, allowing themselves to truly be seen, are fierce and playful and sexy. Choose business as a spiritual practice. Seek collaboration versus competition. No, giving back is not an option. It's a necessity. They do it their way. They radiate. They rise. Now, let's rise together. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show. I'm Jess Tomlinson, and I'm just like overflowing with so much joy, which actually isn't a word that normally comes to me. So yay! I am feeling so much joy to have my dear soul sister who I originally met in Peru a little more than 5 years ago now, Jordanna Eyre. Welcome, Jordanna. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Jess. Like I said before we got on, it's you. And when you asked, it's like, well, it's Jess, of course. So I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you. There's like so many topics that I want to talk to you about. So I'm really excited to see just where this conversation flows. And I really appreciate you because I know you're down for kind of like going to some of the places that like not everybody is wanting to explore. So we'll get more into that. But let's kick it off with the one question that I always ask, which is, what visibility edges are you leaning into right now in your life and your business?
Oh, this is an interesting one. I have a story that this visibility edge is, I could be wrong because the way the collective opens tends to be similar for all of us. Yet I have a story that this is different than everybody else. So I'm curious, actually. I'd love if we have a way of viewer feedback, I'd love to know what everybody else thinks of this. So my visibility edge is around putting systems into my visibility. So I actually, like, from a really young age, speaking my truth wasn't the problem. And yes, there have been lots of edges around that, lots of edges around doing it from a more loving place or like being powerful and fierce, yet still open and soft. So there's so many various edges of the way that we share our voice, speak our truth, allow our authentic selves through, that I'm like all about all those edges. And where I'm at is like, okay, I've been speaking my truth for so long now, and yet the body of work that I hold is very deep, it's very vast, and it's very powerful. And people look at it and they're like, wow, that's so cool, but I don't understand what it is. And the work wants systems put into it. So I literally have like, nobody would know this. So it's interesting to now be saying this out loud. I literally have just in the last few weeks created this whole like social media protocol. And there's basically systems going into everything that has to do with my visibility and sharing this work that is far more systematic than I would have ever thought would be authentic.
Yeah.
Big edge right now.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. That's like next level visibility. I feel like a lot of times what most people need is peeling back the layers to get a little more messy and to have a little more of the like feminine flow. But yeah, you are amazing at that and just like sharing when you feel lit up and putting your message out there. So I'm really curious, did you get support like in creating that, or did you just kind of get a download of what that looks like?
It's been a multi-year process where I would hire people thinking that that's where I was headed. And I would like, people would come in and be like, oh, I can support you with that. And this is not to say I've had some amazing team members in the past. What I found is that actually it had to be me. Like after a lot of failed attempts, it's actually been between myself and God, source, spirit, whatever you want to call that energy. And it's getting downloads, it's sitting with pieces, it's like knowing my work is about one of the core elements is learning to activate and utilize the creation spiral, that like energetic spiral that moves through life, that is life, that moves through everything. Yeah. And so the spiral has been teaching me how to bring this work forward in a spiral, but from a systematic. It's like all spirals are also made up of zeros and ones. And so I'm I'm learning to do that with my work, which is like, I know it sounds so complex, and what's interesting is like that's also what I teach my clients to do with their own stuff, but most of my clients don't know that that's what they're learning to do, because the balance between the systems and the it's all God shows up everywhere in our lives. And so we don't really, it's like we don't know that we're interacting with that, but of course it's taken me years to understand that that's what the heck I would have been doing.
Yes. Ooh, I love that, because I think so many times, because we are so close to just what we naturally do as our gifts, which I know you are so aligned with, like, you know, how you found your work. It's like, it's so interesting because we can't see, like, I heard a quote the other day, like, you can't see the label when you are what's inside the bottle or something like that. I don't know. I thought that was really cool. Like, you can't read the ingredients when you are in the bottle. And I was like, ooh, that is good. Like, I feel like that so much sometimes. And like that seeking and unraveling and experimenting of like, what does that structure that makes up who we be? Like, what is that? And how can that hold our visibility and our work, and like how we're putting it out there?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a powerful quote. And it
Yeah,
is
right?
so true. It is. I had some blessings of like at certain points along the way being shown my label, and I'd be like, I don't like, why am I don't like labels.
Right. I know. Me neither.
But it was like this crazy multiverse needed me to see the labels so that I could identify the process of how we do so. And yet it's not like, it's not something that we're taught because we're inside the bottle. Yeah. The way that we relate to the labels in the bottles and the way that we're taught to relate to them is so like out of sorts. It's almost like, well, if you look at the way patriarchy is and the things that we've been taught that, oh, it's just this physical world, we've learned essentially the reverse or like out of sorts way of accessing both our label and our bottle, which makes it harder.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, how are you making it feel good to create the structure around what, yeah, what might, like, oftentimes, I know for me, you know, I do work really well in the spontaneity, and I realize that like structure is needed, and it's not my zone of genius for myself. I can help other people. Like, I can help other people create the structure, but for me, I'm like, no. So how are you still making it feel good now that you have like this amazing plan, social media plan? Yeah.
Well, one thing is that I believe that we all start from kind of different set points of whether we are more prone to surrender versus like the feminine, learning the flow and the surrender and honoring our darkness, all that, you know, darkness, honoring the shadows, etc., versus the masculine, like doing, taking action, form, structure. And so, you know, some people automatically lie in between, but most of us have kind of an inkling. And I think that so my path was that I got really, really, really good at the thing that was easier first, which for me, you know, it took a while. It wasn't easy at first, but I was more prone to the shadows. I was more prone to surrender and going into, well, it's all God. And I let myself get really, really, really good at it. So that then when it came time to implement the structures, I already had the knowing in my body and my access to my desires and those feminine things that support the flow were so strongly honed that I never did the overforce thing with structure. It was like anytime I tried, it would fail because I was so apt already for the surrender flow piece. That's not going to be the same for everyone, but I do believe that if you go, it's like earlier in your stages of especially entrepreneurship, whatever it is that you're creating, this isn't an end all be all. I have found though that for most of my clients, it's been supportive to go first into the thing you're really good at and get really good at that. And then you open up to the things that you've been resisting, but that are part of your purpose. And you can have a foundation of what you're good at to go into those things.
Yeah, I teach the same thing. I'm like, because usually that is the misalignment that I find that drains people's energies is they're striving so hard to try to do what they think is supposed to work or what might work for everybody else and their strategy or, whatever it is. And it's like they've completely denied the pieces that feel a little bit more easy for them because they think they need to it's like that patriarchal teaching of like we always need to be striving and learning and being better and like going after the thing. So I love that you did that and just fully went all into more of the surrender and the pieces that you're naturally good at, and now here comes like the container.
Yeah. And the cool thing is like, so creation itself, that you are creation's always working with you. That's just, you're human, you live on planet Earth, it's a given, right? That creation is always here working with you. And creation knows what your set points are, what serves you better. So it's always leading you there. Like I find that in the work with the creation spiral that I do in my programs, people automatically know. It's like they even if they have no idea how to listen to the creation spiral, they immediately get it. Like, oh, I need to go more into choice, or oh, I need to go more into surrender, or oh, I need to lean towards this masculine doing for now. Oh, I need to lean towards the feminine flow. It's like, it's the same work because creation's always, it's in a way it's different work, but like the spiral knows it will keep beckoning you through your life and to what you need now. And then when you come through the loop of one spiral, it'll take you into the next levels for you of those things.
Yeah, I love that. Tell us more about the creation spiral. Like how do you describe that? I'm so intrigued now.
Well, okay, so there's like three primary pieces. There's many sub pieces that I work with. There's three primary pieces that make up the way the creation spiral like beckons us. Like, how do you know if it's really speaking to you? One is our humanity. And then in that, it's like the depths of your feels, the brilliance of your mind. Are you overthinking? Us, also the creation spiral. It's not, you're not in supportedness with it if you're overthinking. And it's like there's all of your humanity, the thoughts and the feels, all of it interacts with the creation spiral, and the spiral knows how to like dig into your humanity to help you to grow. Another piece is your unique wisdom. It's always working with you and activating into your unique wisdom. And sometimes that means getting to know the wisdom. Other times it's like, oh, I already know that I know, but it's more about going into the not knowing or releasing and dissolving the ego around the knowing so that people want to hear it from you.
Yeah.
And then the third piece is the spiral, like it's in everything, right? And so when we learn to dance with the physical world as well as the unseen world, like the tangible and the intangible, when we learn to dance with them and together in connectedness, then we can interact with the creation spiral. Then we can see how our money, for example, isn't just physical, or we can see how our relationships are both physical and non-physical, and be able to open to what they're trying to lead us to, for example. Because the spiral is always trying to lead us to next levels of, your infinite self or your infinite self. And those are the three primary ways that it leads us in. And by going deeper into those topics, that you get to consciously interact with it.
Yeah. Wow. And so do you kind of know where you're at in the spiral if you're facing a challenge there? Is that how you know, or kind of ish?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like yes and it's yes is like the firm answer, and then the and version can depend upon the person, because it's a yes and that's if you're not open to your challenges, that you may not understand that no, this really is creation working with you. And then there can be the yes and. So this has been my big pain point, like a lot of my life, is that I was so apt to go into the shadows. And I see this with my clients who have been born already more apt towards the yin, the feminine. This is a struggle for most of us, that it's like you can be so apt to go into the shadows And then you're like, what the F? Like, I'm always creating challenges. This can't be the way life is. What about getting to play? What about joy? What about getting to live into my desires? And so sometimes the challenge of the challenges, the challenge of like, but does it have to always be this challenging, can also be the creation spiral beckoning you into more of the light of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, I've been looking at my own journey lately, and you and I have chatted recently about just how much my last few years have impacted me. And I've really been in this story of like, I know what my life was like, and it felt like magic for most of my like earlier years until like, really just the last 2 years. And like, so I got to really taste what it's like to be in flow and just experience and like be supported and provided for and feel like I was like a magician, really. Like, and I realized that that's not everybody's experience. And maybe some people have never even experienced that. And yet for me, one of my biggest pain points right now is knowing what that's like and being in what I'm in now, which feels like way harder, way slower. Like, it's just a different human experience. And so I'm really learning, that piece, like you said, around like letting the ego go, because I'm like, but I know this and I know that. I'm like, no. And so I'm really like opening up to like, how can I just be in the question more of everything, and not pretend like I know, because the reality is I never knew. It just always felt like I did, right? Like, because things were quote unquote working out for me. So
Totally. And that is where like the spiral comes in layers. It's funny because I have all these examples coming in at once. I'm just trying to see. So an example that's coming to me is like when I was traveling for years. I think in fact, you and I met at the beginning, I think.
Yeah, before you went
my
to
4.5 years of full-time travel.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, it was near the beginning at least. And that I had like just left everything behind and like, all right, my business is entirely online. I'm gonna jump around the world and just go where I go. And it was beautiful, and many elements, not all of that. Some of that had darkness and a lot of processing in it. However, there was also a lot of just extreme like ecstasy and joy, and like I just get to be in the flow and I'm totally free. And that level of freedom was amazing, but it didn't create the freedom. It's like so here's where I'm going with this. The point.
Yeah.
The spiral gives you levels of what you need for the levels of where you are, and those both change. And that's what gets effing confusing, is that it's like, but I don't understand. That thing brought me joy before, but it doesn't now. Or that thing created success in my business before, but now suddenly my business has slowed down, but I'm doing the same things, because the spiral knows how you need to grow and will give you life, or like will have you desiring to interact with life with where you need to grow. So it's always like there's an up level, not just in what freedom means or what your desires mean. It can also get really crunchy when you're learning to bring them together in the new levels.
Yes, that makes complete sense. Thank you for explaining it like that. I love the way you explain things. It's like so much fun for me to hear. And you like totally get when I'm like, I just shoot off some concepts. So yeah, that makes total sense. It's like, I think oftentimes we forget that creation, the universe and God, like it wants us to grow into our highest evolution possible. Whatever that looks like for each and every one of us is going to be different. And that also means that things are going to change and adapt, and it really like pains my heart when I hear so many people on the spiritual path, whether it's on entrepreneurship or just life, right? Like really frustrated because they can't quote unquote sustain something. And like that concept has actually never made sense to me. Like it just hasn't. I'm like, I don't care about sustaining. I care about growth. Maybe like I chose that. And so that's why things are like, rah, But like at the end of the day, like I want to be growing and be challenged and yay, thanks universe. So yeah, what is your kind of perspective on that word sustainability?
I love that you're bringing this up because it's interesting because it's something that's been sitting in my system, but I haven't yet spoken to or even gotten 1,000% clear on myself. And you are bringing it up. I'm like, oh yeah. This is what, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I used to, back in the day, some of my story, my background is that I had been teaching. I was a bilingual teacher. And I took this head freaking first leap from social work and then into teaching, but then I took a head first leap into entrepreneurship.
Right.
I had this vision, like I had been meditating on, well, what's my purpose for 6 months, which at the time felt like a really long time because I was still fairly new to really doing really, it was like only a couple years into doing very deep work. So the what's my purpose, quite literally, I mean, as literal as it can get, this light bulb went on for me where I was like, holy whoa, this is it. I need to open this business.
Yeah.
And that was my purpose. Now, what I didn't understand at the time was it was actually teaching me to understand my purpose. That's how the spiral was working, right? The business wasn't the purpose. The learning business is transformation, the learning to use the spiral of creation. It was like, anyway, where I'm going with that on the sustainability topic, many years ago when I built my first business plan, when my investors moved me up to the Bay Area for $2.5 million in investment. I was involved in all this social entrepreneurship buzz. Sustainability was like the thing. It was the word. It was what everybody was seeking. And more recently, I've been realizing, gosh, I feel I put that word to bed, but why is that? Or I don't feel called to use it anymore, but what? Because you're right, Jess, because I mean, the way creation shows us continually, everything's always expanding, always opening. And if you're focused on sustainability, you're losing the opening. You're trying to control like a certain set point.
Whew, I just got chills.
That point has to change as we open. Has to change.
Yes. Ooh, that whole sustainability is you're trying to control. I got full body chills. That is, and I want to be clear too for those who are listening that are maybe like, okay, but I want stability. Like, I feel like that's a little bit different within ourselves. We can nurture what is needed for a stable ecosystem. See, I'm being really choosy with my words here because again, an ecosystem is actually always changing and evolving. If you think of like a garden, there's different seasons and you need like, depending on where you live, you need different things to make the pH balance right and blah, blah, blah. And we're all unique humans, right?
Yeah. And then you're called to move your vegetables. You're like, but I knew I had to move my vegetables to Italy and the soil is different. And that's going to happen because your fulfillment, it's also, there's a dance with your desires and what feels fulfilling, as well as what you know you're called to and is part of your purpose. And they intertwine together. There's a dance with them together. But they inevitably lead you to the next type of soil and some of it's preparation, right? It's like sustainability might have been, oh, I'm guided to work with this type of client. But then it changes and now it's like maybe it's a yes or it's a completely different type of client because you weren't ready for those people before, but now you are, and you have to speak to them in a completely different way. That's how creation is a constant. But you're right that like the sustainability, it's not sustainability like you're saying, it's finding the support in ourselves. It's learning to be stable on shifting soil because the earth is always shifting, but it is stable at the same time. Our bodies are constantly shifting. And yet we wake up and I suppose if you're lucky, not everybody gets to put 2 feet on the ground, but most of us, we wake up and we at least have this body that supports us no matter what. You've got a body that's here that is supporting you 100% of the time. So there are these elements of where you can find the stability, like you're saying. And it's like going into those will help you to create it in the outward world in a way that it will still get to change, but feel stable.
Yeah. How have you been able, and maybe you have like a story around this, to dance with letting go of control when things have really been changing?
Well, that's a really good question. There's lots of layers.
Hmm.
One of the really big layers, and though it feels very much like a past layer, it's also something that is still active, that is an ever-going process, is my body. The more that I find the support in my body, if I find myself wanting to control, the more that I come home to my physical self, the more I
Hmm.
can just let go and surrender and like not have to be in control.
Hmm.
Um, Another really, this is kind of a broader piece, and it's something I actually have an entire program that this is one of the baseline things that we work with. So it's
Yeah.
something I've gone very deep into, but there's lots of dynamics involved in it. And that's really learning more about how the power struggles that appear in our lives are trying to guide us deeper into who we are meant to be as creation. So I've
Mm.
learned to really dance with and like open to, if I find a power struggle, or if I find myself like suddenly experiencing a new way of wanting to control, or having
Hmm.
something come into my life that suddenly I'm like, but I didn't used to attract that in, and so I didn't realize, but now I'm attracting what? Okay, there's more control coming up. This is different. Each of those pieces, it's like the more I learn about how to dissolve power dynamics as a message, like how to get to the message of the power ickiness, and
Hmm.
then soften into the dance with like, yes, you are powerful, you get to choose, you as a human get to create, and the nothingness of like, and it's not up to you. The dance between the two
Hmm.
has also continued to help me let go of control while not feeling, it's like if you let go too much of control, this isn't actually letting go too much of control, but there's a nuance there with like, for some people, if you only let go of control, then you also don't get to choose and stand as a creator. So
Yes.
the dance with the power dynamics is like the short answer, that the dance back and forth with power dynamics,
Yeah.
each time I've found there's a cellular level shift.
Yeah.
And the big piece there is alchemy, learning to use our emotions, our thoughts, our bodies as alchemy, like learning to alchemize things so that a thought doesn't continue to be this recurring thing. And instead it can come in and be like, oh, there's some DNA ready to shift. Oh, my
Yeah.
cells are ready to transform, so that each new power dynamic or desire to control can be cleared away each time. And then
Mm.
you automatically become more in the letting go each time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. What's coming to me is I've been diving into the gene keys. Do you know anything about gene keys?
They're so good. Yes.
Yeah.
I actually have not gotten through the initial book that I bought. Like, I have my
Yeah.
chart, and there's a lot. I haven't gotten through all of them.
Yeah.
They're freaking amazing, though. They're very powerful.
Yeah. It's really fascinating. I'm just starting to dive in. Um, and one of the big themes in my chart is what you're talking about from that leadership perspective. I have several that are like very similar, from moving from like, the lower level is like selfish, and then like if we go to the other extreme, it would be like, selflessness. But it's and at first I was like, oh my god, like that just feels so like I'm giving up everything. And like, as a former self-care coach, I was like so adamant for learning the lesson in my own life of actually like honoring my own needs and desires. And then the more that I dove into it, it's like, is not really about that, right? It is that you are honoring yourself so deeply that you are able to be completely selfless, in the way that you're showing up in your leadership, because you have really turned within and nurtured from the inside out. And I was like, ooh, okay, yes, whoa.
Yeah. So one of the this is bringing up this awareness that it's one of my favorite things to get to play with, and it really like speaks to what you're saying. So paradox, like the concept of two truths that appear to be opposing. They appear to be like, this can't be true and this at the same time. when we honor them together and we learn to let them both be true, which sometimes means going all the way into one truth and then you can learn the other. It can mean learning them together, whatever. And that's, again, creation will show you. But when we learn to dance with paradox, we find the like God or source version in between. Because what you're saying, it's like, if you go all the way into selfishness, but not in a paradoxical way, that's where people get, it's all about me, 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 me. Whereas selfishness was only ever intended to hold you in who you are so you can serve. And then if you go all the way into selflessness, it's like all you're doing is serving and you end up giving yourself away. And then you can't actually stay in this physical form and really hold this life. And then it's not worth it. But again, it's like they're all meant to take us to the in-between by honoring both.
Yes. Yeah. Which is really where liberation is for me, you know, it's like you get liberated when you can find that point of being able to alchemize, you know, these different lessons. And then from there, like the soil is so fertile that you can shoot up into like that strong, stable tree that doesn't even have to try. It really just is and is available and supported and supportive. Yeah. I love that. Let's talk about alchemy. I want to hear more about, I love what you're saying around alchemizing really like the mind and the thoughts and the emotions. How have you used alchemy in your own work, and what has been, you know, the benefit of really teaching people how to do this?
So there are many subtleties. The two primary ways that I see alchemy happen, well, this is a baseline. So I do have clients that are like, oh, I've already gone there. I'm ready for much deeper. And then it gets like, whoa. The two primary ways are still very whoa though when you experience them. Yeah. And I think the key is like, when I begin to describe this, if you know that you've experienced it, then you already are doing this and you're ready for next levels. And if you're like, oh, it makes sense, but you don't know the experience of it yet, then it's like, stay here for now, right?
Yeah.
They're both powerful. So the two primary ways that we learn to create alchemy are through our thoughts and our feelings / emotions. That said, it cannot happen without the body. So it's like the body is the third piece, right? Like I said, there's a million subtleties, and it's like, well, what's a thought, like a belief system versus a thought, a self-defeating thought versus just an awareness. Like there's lots of forms that the way the matrix of the mind, I call it, like it's like this grid system of our mind consciousness, and learning to work with that and then connect it to the body helps us to alchemize. And then emotions, right? Like emotions, feelings, and that can get drilled down into subtleties. So once you begin to like really feel your feelings and allow your emotions to really flow through you without the mind being hooked. That's the interesting thing, is like our thoughts create alchemy. However, our emotions create alchemy when the thought is not there, when it's just the emotion, right? So when we can really feel the feelings, then you can get to next layers of like just a simple subtlety of sensation. And you don't even understand what it's about, but you're like, ooh, I feel something, and you can go deeper into that. And it will release things that have been buried in your cells. But again, it's like connection to the body is what drives. And then I find, like, I have this client actually, I've got, like, I take just a few one-on-one slots. And I got her last session after this today. So it's very interesting. She's coming up. So this client who, like, she'd already gone so deep that when she went into learning alchemy, she immediately went into like sacred geometry and stuff that I was like, whoa, I did not, but we all come from various places with it. So your body, that's the thing, is your connection to your body knows what levels and versions of alchemy are going to work for you too, which is really, alchemy is just like the shifting of what you're holding on to in your DNA, so that as it releases, dissolves, shifts, you get to become more of the truth in the core of you.
Yeah. Yes. And I what I'm present to right now is like, as you said, when things shift, like it might be different the way that you need to practice this alchemy. And I know for me, I've really been fascinated in how my body wants to move grief. And, like it's just been really interesting. And what I've learned is that it doesn't want to like work out or do anything intense at all. It just want like breathing. I did a lot of breath work with somebody that I hired to do a private intensive with me, and she was trained in like I don't know, it was like Kundalini mixed with like tantric breath. And it was like really powerful, deep breathing, really kind of complicated to the point where when she took me to one level, it was imagining different sacred geometries. I forget the name of that really complex, like a tetrahedron. Is that it? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, a tetrahedron. I've got one on my arm.
Oh, you do? Oh, wow.
Yeah, a tetrahedron, but well, I have a very simplified version on my arm because it's all we could fit into this amazing tattoo. But the tetrahedron is like, this might be what you're talking about. When you they're like these, well, a very simplified way is like, they're these triangles, but they're multifaceted triangles. And then when you put them together, they form, it's like they create a black hole, but they teach us that actually inside of the vacuum of a black hole is not darkness, but is pure light that looks like darkness.
Yeah.
Cool. And I don't know if that's where you're going. That's like my
cool.
At least.
I love that. I mean, I didn't know. It's just like my body knew when she said it, when she told me what to visualize. It took me to this whole other level in like our breath work where my entire body started to go through hot and cold and hot and cold. And then I started to like cry and like have like interesting things come out of me. And so for me, so much more of just the like subconscious body work has been what has been needed, and it's just been very, very fascinating, like of different ways of alchemizing grief as its own kind of emotion, which is different for everyone.
Yeah, grief is such, and I do feel like grief is a really big, I don't want to say starting point because that almost sounds like it's not deep work. It's very deep work. Grief tends to be one of the biggest teachers of alchemy, I think, for people. So it's cool that you're bringing it up. It is, for me, there was like a tipping point and really learning that my body had been trying to alchemize all along. I had gone through this huge breakup, and now prior to that, I had gone through this huge dark night of the soul while I was in relationship with this guy, and he held all this space for me to let my emotions become my teacher. So I had already like gone into my emotions as my teacher. He and I split because we just knew it was time, but we were madly in love still. We just knew that our relationship, we had always just known unconsciously, but also kind of consciously that it was temporary, and we knew it was time, and we knew that for each of us to soar, we had to part ways. And so I found myself all alone by choice in Thailand. I had left Italy where I was living with him. I had gone to Thailand just like, all right, I just have to like be free and let go. Yeah. But I was still in love with this man. And so learning this process between grieving what I had lost while being deeply grateful for what I had and what I had been through, and even the love that we still shared, that dance with grief and gratitude. Yeah. So it's like when we can find the balance between going deep into the shadows and yet still really honoring the fullness of like the mothering of the shadows and the love that they bring, that's a huge pivotal point for most of us. Like that's when alchemy can really begin to happen. Yes. Yeah, I was at an event in San Francisco this past weekend, and one of the speakers said, grief and joy are really two sides of the same coin. And I thought it was really beautiful the way that she explained that, because I'm such a fan of like staying with people wherever they're at until they're ready to flip to what looks like the more quote unquote positive emotion, which nothing is really positive or negative, right? But as a society, we're taught like grief is bad, you need to move to joy. But what she explained is, and I love this, is that when you are in grief, the reason why you are feeling so much grief is because you actually are grieving the loss of so much joy that was in your life and what you got to experience. And so it really is the same. It's just a different way of experiencing, right? Yes. Exactly.
So
And there
I
can
love
also be sometimes an opening of like, maybe whether, so if you had to let something go, but you didn't get to choose it, there's that for sure. And then
yeah,
there can be an additional piece, which is what you're already saying. It's just like another layer of it. If you
yeah,
had to choose to let something go, maybe you like left a job you knew you were supposed to leave, or you know, maybe like you're 18 years old and you like just left home to go away to college, but you chose it. There are things that
mm-hmm.
where we close chapters and doors to
Yeah,
open to something bigger, and yet the grieving of it is so important as we open to the next layers of freedom. It's pivotal,
totally,
actually, deeply. It's like,
totally. I feel like I'm so in that right now because I chose to leave Las Vegas, and I'm still unprogramming myself from saying how much I miss it and love it. And I remind myself, you chose this for a reason to move. And I chose to let go of my dogs. And I grieve that a lot, almost every day still. And it's been more than 2 years. And it's like, wow, like my soul must have really chose something big for me, which I know a lot of it is Ben. Like, you know, I met my partner because of many of these choices that I made. And it's like, I love that you're saying this. Yes, the grief around things that you still chose, and not beating yourself up around whatever you're feeling right now, and taking so much responsibility by saying like, well, I chose it, so I did it to myself. I think a lot of people can go there. Um, yeah, what do you have something to say around that?
you know, it's what it's bringing up too is like sometimes we choose things not even knowing exactly what we're choosing, right?
Totally.
And then
Yeah.
there can be new layers. Like, oh, there's more grief to like an example. I keep getting these romantic examples, which is funny because I do
Yeah.
a lot of my processing and journeying alone, and then also my partners have been very key in their own ways. That
Yeah.
guy that I left behind in Italy, I had visions of this other man before I even left the guy in Italy. But I didn't leave him for another man. I just was like, oh, I'm already having this guy I've had visions of. The visions are coming back.
Yeah.
Oh, that was part of how I was like, oh, I know it's time. Okay, I have to part ways. But then I
Yeah.
find myself like a year or so later, year and a half later, I find myself in relationship with the man I had visions of. I found him. It all came together in its crazy but perfect way. And we're
Yeah.
living together actually I'd left Thailand, gone back for him. And I found myself kind of eat, pray, love style. Remember in Eat, Pray, Love where she's like crying on the floor?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like,
In the
for me, it
bathroom.
wasn't crying on the floor about the simplicity of my life. It was crying on the floor, grieving the simplicity I had left behind, because now I was in this very complex situation with this very complex partner, because I
Mm-hmm.
left the simple guy behind because I knew that my way of soaring was going into the complexities, and he was so perfect in simplicity that I wouldn't get to grow in that. But here I
Mm-hmm.
am with this complex relationship with a very complex man going, oh my God, it's so overwhelming, and wanting the simplicity back, but not
Uh,
really grieving it. It's like
yeah.
we'll go through layers as we evolve in grieving those old chapters to come more fully into the new.
Yeah. Yes, I can relate. So how do we lean into trust in those moments? Like how have you been able to lean into trust and keep moving forward?
So, I mean, there's so many pieces. And I will quickly say before I give the big piece, the body is still key there. I still feel that the
Mm-hmm.
body is like, huge for that. For me, I would say the biggest piece probably seems counterproductive, just not existential angst. So
Mm.
it's like whatever is in our relationship, your relationship with the divine, God, source, whatever you want to call that. You know, you could call it, some of my atheist clients call it time, whatever you call that greater energy.
Yeah.
Whatever your relationship is with it, some of the chapters where we have like deepening openings that create deepenings that are really, really challenging, that create grief, or that create like a control or not wanting to let go, whatever it is that it's bringing up.
Mm-hmm.
There's often times I've found a parallel chapter of like it's like you might go deeper into grieving a loss and something with yourself, but there's also a parallel chapter of like, what is your relationship like with that greater energy?
Mm.
And if we don't ignore it and we let ourselves, and I know that sounds scary and it can be a bit of a mind F, for lack of better words, like, how do I let myself hate the divine? Or how do I let myself question it? Or how do I let myself stray away from it when I know that the connection is what brings me the next layers? But it's like, if you find yourself in existential angst or wanting to stray from it or disconnecting, I've found that honoring that and being true to how you feel in that and letting yourself process whatever that is, whether it's that you want to kick and scream, whether you want to like threaten God or whatever it is you want to do that day.
Yeah.
I've found that actually letting yourself go all the way into it, and therefore the emotions and noticing the thoughts you have around it, creates next levels and next layers of connection to the divine, which brings in a deeper version of trust every time.
Yeah. I like the way that you're describing this. I've never heard anybody describe it like this. I love the way you just paint the picture of your looking at that relationship with the divine during experiencing the emotion and really like feeling that parallel correlation. I actually had an aha for myself just now of like, oh yeah, I totally pushed out the divine during, so much of my grief, especially around losing my best friend, Mary Jane. Like, it was like, I didn't want to meditate anymore. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to like be in my human body, drinking wine, watching Netflix. And like, I felt like I couldn't do anything but that at the time, which isn't necessarily true. But I realized just now that a lot of it is because of that angst of the, like you're just saying, of like, whoa, I don't even want to talk to you right now, like, or connect with you, greater source, spirit, energy, time, because like I feel like I couldn't even handle it because I had absorbed into this human body so much. I was there, when she died, and I think my body was just trying to like process all that, like what just happened, and like survive. And the way that I survive, unfortunately, is by freezing. Freezing is like and just like powering through. And I'm really good in like really hard situations, even when my best friend's dying, like I'm there and I'm with it for everybody else who's breaking down. So thank you for describing that. I feel like that's going to be a really great aha for a lot of other people as they're kind of looking at whatever season or journey they're in their own life right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So we have a few more minutes before we wrap up. I want you to share about this meditation practice that I know you have on your website available for people to download. Can you share just like what it is, why it's important, and how people can find that? I'm curious what it is because I don't even know what it is. So yay.
It's really cool too. I created this meditation before I really understood that my work was with the creation spiral. And what I, looking back, and why I still offer this meditation is that I was working with creation spiral back when I created this meditation. So the meditation is all around power, and it's called the Powerful Beyond All Measure meditation. So it's a support system for you to go deeper into your own perception of power as a whole, and especially in this circumstance, your own power. Because there's, such a relationship that each of us has. It's ever changing with, it's like you want to be powerful, but you don't want to be an ego. You want to be in full integrity, but you want to let the power move through you. This meditation, because it does work with the creation spiral, little did I know at the time when I created it, it will take you into new and next layers of your own relationship with both your power as well as power itself each time you do it. It's really cool, which is why it's called the Powerful Beyond All Measure meditation. So I think you've got a link to access it. Is that right, Jess?
Yes. Yeah. There will be a link over on the show page, this is episode 21. Cool number. So it'll be jessicatomlinson.com/show-21. But do you want to share the link right now?
Yeah, so it's actually on our homepage. So if you go to modernDaySorcerer.com, now Sorcerer is spelled SORCERER. go to moderndaysorcerer.com and you'll get right away an offer for like, you'll be able to see how to access the meditation right then and there.
Perfect. I know we didn't even get into like your definition of sorcerer, and like I have so many other things I want to talk to you about, like leadership, but this has been such a beautiful conversation. And
another thing, if people want to know like, well, what's this sorcerer thing?
Yeah, you have a video.
After you grab your free gift, you'll like bounce out of that and it'll just take you to the homepage on our website and there's a video.
I saw that, yeah.
Myths of a sorcerer and what is it really? So
yeah,
there's always ways to find that out too after this conversation.
Good. Yeah, you're amazing. Go check her out, you guys. She has so much amazing wisdom. I love Jordanna, and I learned so much from you. Is there anything that you want to kind of close with or wrap up? Anything I didn't ask you that you feel called to share?
I guess just the creation spiral wants me to remind everyone, and it's so cheesy and it sounds so canned, but I'm just getting the sense that we all need to hear this.
Yeah.
That it's like how we interact with creation is we begin by standing where we are today. So no matter what you think you could have done differently yesterday, or no matter what you're hoping to be able to create tomorrow, the only way to move into the way we dance with the spiral that has a plan for us as much as we have desires for it, the only way its plan and our desires get to connect and intertwine is by loving what we have exactly right now. So as cheesy as that is, it is the way. It is like, I mean, there's multiple ways to everything, but it is like, it is really, really important that we all remember. So it's just a reminder to everyone listening that wherever you're standing today, stand in it and let it be perfect. And then you'll get to create more of your desires. You'll get to open to what else is next for you. It's like here and now that it begins from.
Yes. I love that. And I got a visual to really like just paint the picture of like two gears hooking in, and then the machine can move, which is really weird. I don't normally get like very kind of like machine type visuals, but that's what I'm seeing. It's like when you land on today, then they hook in, and then you can like move and create together with the now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I just love you, and I love your wisdom, and I love the way that you illuminate such complex topics, at least maybe complex for some people. I like to geek out about this stuff, but
the simplicity of the complexities at the end of the day.
Totally.
And then they become more complex, and then we come into more simplicity.
Totally. It's like super fun to geek out of all the different things. And then at the end of the day, really this stuff is just, there's so many basic, boiled down potent concepts that really allow us to become our own modern day sorcerer.
And it's about the embodiment of it. It's right. It's like easier said than done to know what you know, or to have like read it in a book or heard somebody speak about it, or, even just have the intellectual knowing for yourself. It's like, how are we embodying these concepts? That's what's up for us now.
Yes. Yes. That's really present for me too. Like, we can keep talking about it, but what is your action step that you're taking away to actually embody this work? So thank you so much, beauty. I love you. Mwah.
Mwah.
Thank you for everybody listening.
For having me.
You're so welcome. Go ahead and you can find us on social media, or if you're watching this video, you can post in the comments if you found it on Facebook or on Instagram. And we would just love to hear from you and your thoughts around this. So take care, everyone, and we will see you next time.